I'm back in the trenches. This is a familiar sight. Good morning, Kriegsman. Private Jenkins? I don't think that's a Kriegsman. I mean, just look at that Aquila over there. Who are we fighting against? The forces of chaos, of course. It seems the Ogrons have had an upgrade. Well, everything seems normal here. It looks like we're receiving an Ministrom approved message. Let's take a look at it. Hello, guardsmen. You have been sent to the wrong war zone. But don't let that discourage you. You too can fight in a holy crusade for the Emperor. There is unforeseen benefits. Because we are fighting the forces of hell and not chaos, we don't need to redact you after deployment. Hooray! Secondly, although the humble lasgun might be the overpowered weapon for the Imperial Guard, there has been complaints about it not being able to penetrate Space Marine armor or deflecting off shiny surfaces. But against the forces of hell, you are all the Doomslayer. Now let's purge in the name of the Emperor. Boys, it looks like we're on vacation. Ogeron Corps, we are going on a raiding expedition and we are getting that armor. Let's get started. Step 0. 1. Does not simply paint a mini without priming it first. I primed mine in Mechanicus Standard Grey Reddish. Step 1. We want to base all the armor in Death Corps Drab. You might need to water down your paint just a little bit. If it's too watery, it's really not going to stick on well. So you just want it to go on all nice and smooth. You want to paint all the armor in it. We're going to use borne. Now, if you're using a wet palette, then you most likely do not need to water this down. But if you're using a paper plate, like I do most of the time, you're going to want to water down your paint just slightly until it's like a smooth consistency. Now, I used a medium-sized brush to a slightly larger end, and I put my brush firmly against it, and I just made shapes. Now, I tended originally to make them smaller, but you want these shapes to be a decent size. And I tried to cover all of the armor plates with it just a little bit, even if it's just a little. So I did quite a larger one on the chest. I put some on the shoulders, the forearms, the elbows, the knees, and the legs. I just want to make sure I covered everything with it just a little bit. And we're also going to be adding another color to it, so just keep that in mind when you're doing the borne. I also based this off of a World War I tank color scheme. Step 3, we're going to use Tusker fur. We're going to do the exact same thing that we did with the borne. This is kind of like this lighter brown with a little bit of red into it. And once we wash it, it's going to get a whole lot darker and it's going to look really good. Also, Tusker fur is a great base for skin too. So I don't know if I have a video on that or not. I'll have to recheck. To really seal in this steel, we're gonna use contrast Black Templar. Now you could use a watered down Abaddon Black, water it down until it's an ink-like substance. But the contrast Black Templar is already the consistency that you want. We're gonna use a fine, small, pointy brush, and we're just gonna go along all of those shapes that we just painted. We are now going to use Iron Warriors. We're gonna start off painting that kind of receiver back end of the gun, as well as that entire drum mag. Just make sure that you get all good in there. Next, you're gonna wanna paint all of the chain mail, which there's even some chain mail like behind the legs and under the arms. You wanna make sure that you get that all in that Iron Warriors, as well as that thing on the back. I think it's a pirate back. I don't really know, but we're just gonna assume it is, unless you know otherwise, and you let me know in the comments, and we're gonna paint that in Iron Warriors as well. For the new Antioch symbol, we're gonna use Sotek Green. You want to make sure that you water this paint down just slightly until it's an ink-like substance. And what you're going to do is you're going to paint a line, and this line is going to be the largest width of the symbol. Then right down it, I painted a line straight down the middle to the bottom where I want it to end. Then on either sides, I just kind of paint it down, and then just did a little curve towards the bottom, and I filled it all in. Now, we did see that in some of their artwork, they actually made it red with like a yellow spearhead right in the middle. But the one that I'm showing you is based off of their wiki page. And I just thought the symbol was cool, so we're going with it. We are now going to get Mephiston Red. You're going to want to paint that top right area in a square. And I painted that first, going straight down the middle and just kind of eyeballing it to hit it midway. And then you want to paint that bottom left area in that red. Since it still has that curve, I just followed with that curve. Now, as you can see, there is a slight space in between. Pretend these are my squares. And I see a lot with checkers that they don't touch. So even if you have a perfect square, if they're not touching, it's not going to look good. So even if you have to adjust it, if it's not perfect, it's going to look a whole lot better if you can get these two touching. For the spearhead in the symbol, we're gonna use Uriel Yellow. You wanna make sure that your paint is watered down just slightly to an ink-like substance, that way it's gonna be easier to glide on. You're gonna paint a line directly down the middle, and this is gonna be the height of the spearhead. Next, you're just gonna wanna paint the sides. You wanna be about 2/3 of the height of it. Go down, and then you're gonna cut it off to the very bottom. That way it's gonna look like a spearhead. Now it's time to make it grim dark, and we are gonna start off with NEWSH, which I tend to think NEWSH looks really good on objects that are slightly larger and less detailed, so it's gonna look really good on this. We wanna do about 4 parts NEWSH to 1 part our mixed color. For our mixed color, we wanna do 2/3 Dryad Bark to about 1/3 Troll Slayer Orange. And it doesn't need to be perfect, just kinda eyeball it. You want to mix that all good and up. And with a larger brush, you're going to want to paint this in sections. So I went ahead and I would paint the legs first. And then I get a makeup sponge. And in a motion, we're just going to wipe it away. Just wipe it away. And the makeup sponge is going to be way better than if you're using like a cotton round or a Q-tip, because these tend to have a bunch of little hairs on them. And they're just going to get stuck on the mini, leaving a bunch of little hairs stuck in with that mixture, and it's going to be a pain to get out. So using a makeup sponge is going to prevent this and make this process a whole lot easier. For highlights on the green areas, we're gonna do approximately 2/3 Death Corpse Drab to about 1/3 Ushabby Bone. This might be kind of similar to striking green if you have it, but mine is cooked, so we are doing this mixture instead. You're gonna mix that all good enough, and with a slightly larger to a medium-sized brush, you want to get that excess paint off first. And you're just going to tap it in, just stipple it in. And you want to do this for larger areas of highlights on those green areas. So just stipple it in along that top area that's ridged, focus on those edges. And it doesn't need to be perfect, you just want to stipple in and stay away from the edges. So if this is where those black lines are that we painted, you're just going to want to stipple it in the middle, leaving little bits of break in between those areas. And this is going to help make it look like it's almost like sun damage on there. Now, like even on the shoulders, it has this bump area, or kind of raised surface where it goes like this, indents a little bit and out. This would be the area that you want to stipple and make it brighter. You want to leave this area that's indented alone and then focus again on that little rim of the shoulders. With that same mixture of Ushabti Bone and Death Corp of Drab, we're gonna do equal parts. You're gonna mix that all good and up, and you're gonna add some water to the mix until it's an ink-like substance. That way it's gonna be really easy to glide on your mini. Use a small, fine, pointy brush, and we are going to add battle damage. Now, I like to focus along sharp edges. You're gonna add some light scratches, and on those edges, you're just gonna wanna tap it. So just tap, 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 tap. Along those edges, you don't want it to be even. Add light scratches in some areas where it already has battle damage on the mini, like built in. I just used that to my advantage and just highlighted that area in that lighter mixture as well. Now on some of the edges, you could just tap it almost at an angle like this. Just go tap, 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 and it's gonna leave these little lines along some of those edges that you want to have little scratches already kind of built in there, like they're coming up like that. Now for all of those light beige areas, we're going to want to go back and use Ushabti Bone. I used a smaller brush and I got the excess paint off first using a paper towel. And we're just going to want to stipple it in all of those areas. You still want that dark coming through, that dark beige that we washed coming through along those edges. So I stayed away from the edges, just focusing in the middle, and it doesn't need to fill in that entire area. Now for edges that are sharp, like along the chest or along sharp ridges, I did go and I did tap those in the Ushabti Bone as well. We are going to go back to Tusker Fur, and just like the Ushabti Bone, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to use a small brush and we're just going to stipple it in large areas of highlights and focus along sharp edges, but stay away from edges in general that are not end pieces. What if you want even heavier battle damage? Then we're going to use Contrast Black Templar or Watered Down Abaddon Black. Now there's already areas that have battle damage, and we're just going to get that black and we're just going to put it in some of those areas, because later on we're going to add metal on top of it and it's going to really help it pop out. I even did it along some edges where I plan to add some chips and some heavier scratches as well. Now where armor plates would meet, you would tend to think these would chip more often. So I would add little black lines right here where I plan on doing the heavier damage. Now if you want to help make some of your light scratches stand out, you're going to want to use that watered down mixture or just Contrast Black Templar. You're going to add that line right underneath the lighter line that you did for that battle damage. to really seal in the battle damage, we're gonna use a bright silver, like Stormhost Silver. And with a small brush, we're just gonna go over those areas that we just did in the last step with that contrast Black Templar. You want to tap it just along some of those edges that you painted in that pure black. You don't want it to be complete. Even on the battle damage, I didn't do it complete. I just did little sections in there. Even on some of the scratches. Because this is so bright, a little bit is going to go a long way. So just do it on a couple edges, a couple areas that you did it in that black. Just don't overdo it. Now on that front where you have that chainmail, it's actually fairly flat. But the chains have this downward and this upward motion as every other one. And I just dry brushed the ones that were going in the downward motion, which was every other one. And I did this because I wanted to keep some of that brown that we did earlier on. Now for the gun itself, using that larger brush, I just dry brushed all of those edges with that silver. Uneven, making it look kind of a little bit more like scratches and things like that. But then I went back with a small brush and I just did little light scratches throughout the middle of the metal. Remember, it's heresy not to like and subscribe to this video. And if you want even more content, check out my gaming channel at Gaming. And remember, Discord is now up and running. I want to see your mini pics and I want to have Warhammer community discussions. I also have a sneak peek. It is done and it is ready to be painted. It is all spray painted. I have two HH Lehman Russes. For this one, I converted it to Krieg. We have a Kriegsman up here, a shovel, and some other bits that I have added. I also have purchased something that's $230 on Games Workshop that will be arriving. If you know what it is, let me know.